Welcome to Lou Palumbo's Between the Lines. Problem solving for our future. Lou. Common sense, logic, and reasoning. Lou. The man that can't stand hate and animus. Lou. Stimulating the thought process of America. Lou. Where being right is not political, it's factual. Lou. Providing real solutions in real time. And now, here's your host, Lou Palumbo.
If you're wondering why I'm here, it's because we're in trouble. I'm gravely concerned about the future and welfare of our children, and for that matter, the nation. Never, never, ever a shortage on issues that are just pulling at the threads of this country. Can't help but observe the fact that every institution that basically creates the foundation of this country is being tugged at, whether it's the borders, control of cities, the economy, our foreign policy, and most recently we're now starting to attack the institutions that guide us through very delicate questions, constitutionality. We attack these institutions now when it doesn't lend itself to our narrative, so to speak. So this is getting really interesting. Whoopi Goldberg made a comment directed towards Clarence Thomas that don't be surprised if they're coming for you. You know, I don't know how this type of rhetoric is permitted to remain on air, and I have no bone to pick with Whoopi per se. She has misspoken quite a number of times, so this is not an anomaly. Her assessment, to remind everyone of the Roman Polanski case, where he drugged and plied a young 14-year-old little girl with champagne before he raped her, was the following. It wasn't a rape. Maybe Whoopi can explain to me what that means, because I'm fairly well versed in the law, and I know a sexual assault when I see one. She went on further to say at some point that Hitler did not attack a race of people. I'm sorry, once again, your lack of formal education is showing. Again, as I mentioned earlier, now she's directed something towards Clarence Thomas. That's completely inappropriate. But then again, Chuck Schumer did it. I'm getting prompted to discuss this Jonathan Capehart and his references to crazy white people redundantly, how he and other blacks are afraid of crazy white people. Now, there are a lot of crazy white people out there, but what I found is just a lot of crazy people out here, period, some of whom need help and guidance. How he's allowed to say that is beyond me. He also referenced Florida as a state that you can't say gay. This is a journalist or a person that would like to refer to himself as a journalist on MSNBC, a 24-hour news cycle. This is just simply unacceptable. Interestingly enough, the producer of the show, Lloyd Molander, sent me an article yesterday from the LA Times about why California should be more afraid of blacks with guns. I don't quite understand that statement, because there's a lot of good black people, period. The overwhelming majority of them are good people. Why shouldn't they be permitted to protect themselves? And that statement was rather racist. I'm no more concerned if a black person has a gun than a white person, especially when it's in the hands of someone who's law-abiding, educated and trained, properly screened. I don't see what the issue is here, but somehow the LA Times got away with saying that yesterday, and that's a little disconcerting. I want to talk about this Hunter Biden case for everyone's edification, because they're up all Hunter's back, and I definitely believe there's a problem with this young man. And I have to say one thing. I empathize with the president. You know, this is his son. We can all sit here and live in the 51st state of denial, but that's his son. And you know, I can't imagine how heart-wrenching it must be for anyone to watch their son go down a path of abuse with alcohol and controlled substances, not to mention his personal life, which, by the way, is his business. Violating the law is another discussion. There are some issues about his, I would say, less than legal management of firearms as well. For everyone's edification, stop getting your underwear in a bunch, because it's not going anywhere. I think the best you can hope for is that in November of this year, 2022, we see a dramatic shift in the House and the Senate, at which point you might see an impeachment. You might see them invoke the 25th Amendment. You might see them call for the removal from office of individuals like Mayorkas and Merrick Garland. Just so you know, their issues is they seem to lack the ability to define boundaries and explain to people there are consequences when you talk to them, as well as many other people. I mean, just as recent as the Supreme Court justices, which I surely still going on, protesting outside their homes, the attempt to intimidate, threaten, or harm them, which, by the way, they disclosed a plot to harm one of them, Kavanaugh. Why they did not feel compelled to enforce Title 18, Section 1507, it simply defies logic and reason and decency. What kind of men are you? I mean, seriously, you guys wouldn't last 15 minutes in my world. I can tell you that right now. I got to say something to you. I listen to people criticize the police and cops. I've heard everything. I've worked shoulder to shoulder with more men and women, and I have to say my generation wasn't too many women. In fact, I have no recollection of any that have more honor in their pinky nails than our Attorney General and our head of Homeland Security. This is disgusting. You men are just shameful excuses for men, no less leaders. These are our Supreme Court justices. And I say this to you. If this activity was going on outside the house of a liberal-leaning Supreme Court justice, I would be up your back the same way. There aren't two sets of rules out here, folks. There's one set of rules universally applied. That's the problem with this country today. We seem to be making it up as we go along, which, by the way, we did in law enforcement, because that's what the streets are. That just comes at you hard and fast, and you make it up as it goes along. You know, you're dealing with different people, different days. You guys have all these frameworks, all these laws, all these guidelines. You can't even work with those. I don't know how you live in my world trying to be creative and maintain order and keep people happy and safe. I do not know what to say. Where was the president to tell everybody, back off, back down? We're going to get through this. Where's the voice of reason and common reassurance? Absent from the conversation. Like most times, a lack of decency, a lack of honor, a lack of integrity. And I defy anyone that would like to call in, regardless of your political affiliation, and I have none, to challenge what I'm saying. The law is the law. I also don't understand why the local law enforcement agency didn't enforce the law. They had a prerogative to do so. I would have cleared the streets and set off the end of the blocks, and you wouldn't have got on the block unless you were a resident, period. Oh, by the way, I've done that. I did it during the NBA All-Star game in New York City. I had to close the intersections with the help of John Cadiglia, the inspector in Manhattan South Task Force, because it was so out of control in front of the venue. Not in a bad way, just too many people unsafe for them. We shut the intersections for a basketball party, the NBA All-Star game. We can't do it for our Supreme Court justices? I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. We just have so many sets of rules based on your political affiliation. I don't know how anybody in government today, Pelosi, Garland, Mayorkas, or Biden, look any of these Supreme Court justices in the eyes and hold their heads up. You are a shameful display of human beings. This got nothing to do with politics. I don't care what your political affiliations are. That's not what this is about. This is about lines you don't cross. And by the way, in case anyone hasn't been paying attention, this whole issue with Roe v. Wade has become the impetus to engaging in civil disobedience once again nationwide. What is it people don't understand about what was said? It's in the educational platform for us. Those issues not addressed or mentioned in the Constitution are reserved for the states to resolve for themselves. But let me say one thing to you about this also, so we don't have hearts of stone. If indigent women in particular, once again, the minorities are the ones going to be slapped around by these rulings. But if women need help getting to environments that lend itself to their liking, then the government should step up, and already corporate America has offered to. Simple. This is it. We can work with this. You know, you just have to be of open mind. You know, I am very conservative when it comes to your safety. There's not a lot of wiggle room with me. I know how to keep you safe. I know what's right and I know what's wrong. A lot of these other issues, I'm very open-minded. I don't care who you sleep with, and I don't want to hear about it. If you're transgender and you're happy, I'm happy for you. Stop telling people about your private life. Guard your privacy. You know, I don't know why we're so off track here, but I do know why, actually, because we lack leadership. We lack a voice of reason and calm. We lack the inability to speak to this country and its masses, which is the role of the president, I might note, and other elected officials, and tell everybody we're going to be okay. We're a little different, but we're going to work through this, folks. That's it at the end of the day. You know, I have to say something else. Someone from Antifa attempted to use, I would say, a flamethrower of type on the police. I want to tell everyone something about arson, and you can go fact check me. To prevent, terminate, or affect the arrest of an arsonist, you may use deadly physical force. If you think I'm lying, go look at the penal law in the state of New York. There are certain crimes. Burglary in the first degree is one of them. Kidnapping in the first degree. Arson in the first degree. Rape in the first degree. Okay? Escape in the first degree. Prevent, terminate, affect the arrest. You know, they're just fortunate that the police departments are being as judicious and restrained as they have been. But I hate to say this also, tragically say this, if they shot one or two of them, maybe it would curb the behavior of individuals that are hell-bent on destroying your society. Let me point out a fact to you that may not be like resonating in everyone's thought process. The percentage of people in this country that are destabilizing this country are infinitesimal. I'm going to say less than 1 million. We're a population of 335 million. Let me create a little equation for you. If 10% of that population, 33 million ballpark, were up in arms and protesting violently, we would have a problem on your hands of epic proportion, especially since there's only 800,000 law enforcement agents and a lack of resolve to enforce the law. Let me back it down for you. 5%, which is roughly 16 million people. If we had 5% of the population carrying on the way this one minuscule percentage of a percent are carrying on, we would be up to our backside in alligators right now. This whole episode, you know, of civil disobedience is being misportrayed by the media because it serves their optic, serves their narrative, and their viewership that want to buy into this baloney, and their sponsors, which feed their multi-million-dollar salaries. Guys, you're having the wool pulled over your eyes and you don't even realize it. I've told you repeatedly, don't take anything I say and just believe it. I don't want to spoon feed you. I'm giving you food for thought. Go out and find out for yourself. Go out and find out what the 24-hour news cycle is telling you. This is disgraceful. Let's go one better. 2.5% of the country was acting in a civil disobedient manner. 2.5% of 16 millions, roughly 8 million people. Does anyone have the ability to comprehend the scope of a problem with 8 million people engaging in civil disobedience? This is a handful of people, probably less than 500,000 nationwide, that are destabilizing your country, and you're sitting there thinking, please, this is the way people feel. No, it's not. This is completely distorted. The facts attached to how many people are all so offended. And you need to look at the demographic. A lot of young people that don't have enough things to do with their time, and older people that should know better. You should be a voice of guidance, not disruption. Nothing good comes out of violence, folks. Violence begets violence. I don't know what people don't understand. Oh, yeah, by the way, you're helping the sale of guns. Guns, once again, are on the uptick because people sense what's going on. They see what's going on. They're unsettled. They're distrustful of government based on the behavior of the knuckleheads I pointed out in Washington, D.C., and I apologize to knuckleheads because I didn't mean to drag you into that conversation. But I cannot tell you how much disdain I hold for Merrick Garland and Mayorkas in particular. It's incumbent upon them to enforce the law and be part of the security mechanism for our Supreme Court justices and other. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. This is Between the Lines. I encourage you to call in or email. Instacart. Another interesting concept. You can go to your favorite grocery stores, sign on to their application without leaving your home, the comfort of your home. Just pick out the items you'd like. They'll assign a personal shopper for you and deliver them to the point that you would like them delivered to. Another great concept, very user-friendly, and I'll be honest, we use it also. It's very effective, and they're very, very good. They're very on point. I want to say one last thing before we move on to our call today. If you're watching the borders, I keep reminding you, these are defining moments for this country going forward. We are allowing millions of people to swim into the United States. This is the most bizarre immigration process I've ever seen. I do know they came over the water one other time, and that was through Ellis Island, but they were on boats. Now they're swimming the Rio Grande River. I also remind you of this. There's a lot of sex trafficking, narcotics trafficking. Look into Phantom Rescue, organization designed to, intercept people engaged in that illegal practice. I also want to remind you that it's important to thank our sponsors, Buzzsprout and Instacart. Can't say enough about them. We build this platform off Buzzsprout. Instacart I use, and a lot of people I know use it. Works. And give it a whirl. Look into them. You lose nothing. With that being said, we're going to get into the show right now. Okay, Emma from Frisco, Texas asks, 46 immigrants just died in a truck, numerous drowning in the Rio Grande River by border jumpers, and now Biden's nominee Ed Gonzalez has withdrawn from consideration to be the Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Why don't we act now and fix the problem instead of ignoring it? What's it going to take? Okay, make this very short and sweet. The number's up to 50, I understand, Emma. And I guess the young lady who just left as the White House press secretary, what's her name, lady? Who? Psaki. The young lady who just left as the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, acknowledged that the borders are broken, once on a live interview with Dana Perino, and then the next day, a live White House press conference, done nothing to fix the borders. I'm just wondering how the president sleeps at night at this point. Maybe he's even unaware that this is going on. I don't know how to quantify, a response to this. The question simply stated is, when is enough with the border? I keep telling, the audience that I have every day, I know the economy's pulling at you. I know we're looking at crime in our major cities, incredible. Our foreign policies like Afghanistan withdrawal, very, very troubling. This border issue is going to redefine this country. We cannot allow people in the millions to indiscriminately enter this country, without being vetted properly, not to mention the over 800,000 individuals who crossed into this country as gotaways, which means that only through technology are we able to account for them. By that I mean cameras and drones. The border is a threat to your national security. The mismanagement, the intentional mismanagement of the border is treasonous. Read the law regarding treason. I have to tell you one thing. This is going to be the litmus test for the Republican Party, because we're already seeing the litmus test for the Democratic Party. The Republicans better start to understand their responsibility is to make this nation safe and financially viable again. You're poking and prodding at the Democrats. I hear you. When you get your at-bat, as we call it in baseball, we're going to see what you're going to do. Be careful what you wish for. You may get it. You want control, you're probably going to get it. But I'm going to tell you this. If you sit on your heels, like our political elected officials have been known to do, you're going to send this country reeling. We are so unstable right now. It's frightening. The additional purchase of weapons is a tell. It should be going in the opposite direction. People should be calming down, not amping up. They're buying guns in record numbers. While we're at it, I do want to talk to you a little bit about this Roe v. Wade case again. Just to simplify it for everyone, one final time, all the Supreme Court did was give the states the right to regulate the abortion issue, period. And if it isn't a state you're living in that's friendly to your liking, then travel to a state that is. And I believe the government should help you get there, especially if you're of indigent circumstance. So hopefully that answered the question. The border issue is not complicated. We need to have some type of mechanism that allows orderly migration into the country that lends itself to proper vetting by law enforcement. Keep reminding you, there's only 800,000 law enforcement agents in the country, 335 million people, folks. You're spreading them kind of thin. I hope that answers that question, Emma. We have Maddie from Wenatchee, Washington, asking, the Supreme Court ruled yesterday that a Washington State public school district violated the civil rights of a Christian school football coach who was suspended for refusing to stop leading prayers with players on the football fields. The separation of church and state is in question again. The ruling was 6-3 in favor of the coach because his actions were protected by his rights under the Constitution's First Amendment, which protects free speech and free religion. What are your thoughts? I think you just said it there. Free speech and freedom of religion. You know, I'm starting to question why we're taking issues when we don't really have to. You know, I learned something really interesting in life. You have to pick and choose your battles. This country is like an open wound right now, you know, and we're just bleeding and bleeding and bleeding, and we just keep making the wound worse. I'm trying to figure out who he was harming by going on the field and praying. In other words, was there some type of subversive agenda attached to the? I'm trying to struggle why this became an issue. You know, I don't know what to say about this topic, but you know, we opened up another can of worms here, and you put it in the lap of the Supreme Court justices, and once again they resort back to the Constitution. The separation of church and state was meant to restrict government from making us making an official U.S. religion, not restrict religion. We didn't want to have one religion. We didn't want to restrict religion. Freedom of religion means you have your right to engage in whatever religious activities you choose. I don't understand why it's so hard for the public not to wrap their arms around this, although I do know why, because perhaps if some education regarding these issues took place from the leadership, it would help diffuse many of these questions that we have. That's just where we're at, guys. This isn't that difficult to understand. It's in your Constitution. Read it. Stop listening to the media outlets. Read, research, investigate. You see, I have to tell you, I'm a little bit of an advantage over a lot of people because by nature I question things. I investigate. I encourage anyone listening to do the same. Just look into this a little bit. Our Second Amendment is another example. I don't know where the interpretation goes. Your right to bear arms shall not be infringed. And the concerns of the Founding Fathers were articulated. Tyranny, foreign invaders. After they wrote the Second Amendment, which I think was like 1787, I'm sure my producer, Mr. Moland, is going to correct me if I'm wrong. We had another run at the United States by the British in 1812 where they burnt the White House. That's a foreign invader. They knew what they were talking about. Look at the condition of the country today. Period. We're being overrun, and I don't mean just in a literal sense, I mean figuratively speaking. We're just being overrun with issues because they're not being managed from the top. I have Jeff from Washington, D.C. I take Amtrak to and from New York. It's not cheap, and it's not safe. That's interesting. I'm now trying to find out what's going on Amtrak because that's the first time I've heard it referenced as being unsafe. As far as the safety component, there are law enforcement agents, Amtrak police. I happen to know someone who retired from law enforcement who, in fact, he was from California, Beverly Hills. And he told me firsthand there's plenty of supervision there. I think the issue that maybe Jeff is alluding to is this crash that just took place where it's reported that 3 individuals are dead. I don't know enough of the nuances of that case, and once again I have to rely on the reporting news cycle for information, so you got to look at it and decide you take it with a grain of salt, you know, how much you can invest in that. But I think you're going to see the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, investigate this to find out exactly where this went wrong. Guys, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back. So let me tell you a little bit about Buzzsprout. Very interesting concept. Basically, it allows you to set up your own podcast. One of the most advantageous things about using Buzzsprout is it's user-friendly. So I encourage you highly, if your inclination is to create your own podcast, please look into Buzzsprout. And by the way, we use it. We're back, ladies and gentlemen, and I just want to elaborate a little further as I'm getting more information regarding this Amtrak incident in Missouri. Apparently, there were no control devices that would prevent people from crossing the tracks when trains were oncoming, and apparently a dump truck, maybe they made a run for it, I'll never know, crossed in front and apparently caused this massive derail. Avoidable. Maybe the transportation secretary can explain as why we haven't gone across the country under his watch and installed proper gates or whatever mechanisms are necessary to make this rail transportation and vehicular transportation safer. It's the same transportation secretary that told you they're going to spend $5 billion on installing locations where you can charge your electric cars. Not to go off on a tangent, guys, I went out and looked at electric cars this weekend, partially because I'm interested in my curiosity. So I went into a Tesla dealer, and the low end of the vehicle was $65,000 with as much as $140,000, depending on what model you needed based on size of vehicle. Reassuring me that with nothing in the front of the car, that the way the car was designed, they were, I guess, safe with high-speed crashes. I'd like to see some statistics and look at some bodies of automobiles at impacts at 30 and 40 miles an hour. But I think the whole message here is that we're under an immense amount of financial duress right now, which again goes back to the borders. We're letting millions of people in the country we're taking care of as the country's in financial distress. And while the country's in financial distress because of the inflation rate and the cost of gasoline in particular and food in the supermarket, we're thinking people have disposable income. And that's gone away. So I don't know what bubble they're living in Washington, D.C. or any of these states where the elected officials are hanging out, but you better get in touch with your people here because we got an issue here. We took a short break, ladies and gentlemen, and now we're back, and I just want to have a quick discussion with you about Buckhead in Georgia. It was reported in the news today that the rapes are up as high as 80% and robberies 26%. Now, what I find disturbing is where's the outrage from NOW or the Me Too movement or anyone that's sincerely invested in, our women in this society. Make it really simple. I don't want to make this too complicated. I mean, I'm greatly offended. I don't know what's going on in Buckhead. Buckhead used to be a very, very pleasant place to visit. Stayed there with a very high-profile client from the royal family of the United Kingdom. Stayed in the Ritz-Carlton there, had a great experience, and it was in the 90s, I have to tell you. Apparently today it's changed, but I think right now they're almost in a form of wanting to secede from the rest of the jurisdiction and the municipality. And I just ask you, what's the turning point for people in Buckhead? Plain and simple. I want to talk to you a little bit about this Second Amendment issue and this gun control issue in the country, or what I like to call gun management. We watched the Senate put forth and pass and have signed bipartisan legislation that I'm still struggling with, that we needed that in order to allocate funding for mentally ill people. We needed you to get involved in a gun discussion. And also we are now going to allocate monies for the purpose of school safety. We needed to get involved with the gun legislation agenda to do that for our children. Guys, you got to read between the lines here. This is a little bit what the show is about, reading between the lines. I've said to you guys before, you look at the Build Back Better bill, which addresses concerns of farmers, and commingled in there is legislation we need for our children. Why isn't legislation that is specific to our children, our elderly, our mentally ill, our veterans, individually pushed through in a fast track so we can get aid to the people that need it right away without commingling into your pork belly spending agenda? I just find this incredibly distressing. And it indicts the government. Guys, you got to start doing things different in Washington. I know you think we're not going to lose the country, but it's an expression I've become very familiar with. It says the day you thought would never come will arrive, and that's going to happen to us. You know, I've watched people in relationships be disrespectful and abusive to boyfriends, girlfriends, spouses, and you think it's just, you're going to go on like this forever. Trust me, the day is going to come that you didn't think would arrive, and then we're going to have a real issue as far as this goes. You know, I wish the president would spend as much time parading around the country as he does around the globe. I'm not underscoring the importance of G7, not saying that for 1 second, but I think it would behoove him to spend some time with the people in this country. Go and travel to Los Angeles and get with the people, or New York, and hang out with the people and see what's going on in these two major cities. Then go across the country. Go visit Milwaukee. Crime is going through the roof. Go have a conversation with the public and explain to them why the defunding issue that you kind of went back and forth on has been the impetus to basically the elimination of law enforcement effectively in this country. The guys that still wear the uniform, the girls that still wear the uniform, they're not rushing out there to help you, because every time they go near somebody, we're looking to figure out what it is they did wrong, and can we take their pension and even more so incarcerate them. I know you don't think much of them, but think this, they're not stupid, okay? I talk to them oftentimes, many of them. I have a lot of, I won't call them friends, acquaintances that I know in law enforcement here across the country. You guys missed this one, folks. Your police have stopped working for you. We got a bigger issue. You're talking about cutting the budget, defunding the police. You don't have to worry about that. We can't find people that want to go into police departments. That's the way we're going here. Guess what, guys? Take a look at the way government is run. We're going to have the same problem there. Nobody sane, rational, or reasonable is going to want to go near any elected office by virtue of the fact that we just decide how we're going to tear you apart every way we can. And if we can't find out something bad, we'll just make something else up, and someone in the media will irresponsibly put it out, kind of like MSNBC with their assessments of crazy white people or gay Florida. Don't say gay in Florida. Someone irresponsible like that, and that's shameful that that was done. But they'll put it out there for you, and a certain demographic will latch onto it as if it's the truth. People rely on these media outlets and the news in general for information. It's why it's so critical that it be credible and competent. But it's not. And that's not going to change, I don't think, in the near future. I've said to you guys redundantly, we need to have oversight with the media. They need to have their feet held to the fire when they disseminate information that is less than truthful, or knowingly it is inaccurate. Okay? This isn't complicated. It's about restoring integrity and honor and the truth to this country and this government, of which people just feel universally it's lacking. We lost our caller today, Chris, and it's not a gigantic issue. Chris had something independent of his commitment to us that was very important, and you know, I want him to take care of that. But I want to tell you something about this gentleman. Called into the show, gravely concerned about the country, doesn't understand the borders, doesn't understand why crime is rampant in your cities and not being addressed, doesn't understand the economy, how we got here. We listened to the president explain to us that Putin did it, oil companies did it, and now we're chasing the gas stations. You did it. How about he did it? When the first or second day in office, he shut down the Keystone Pipeline. What do you think the fallout of that was going to be? I also heard the president say that after we endure this traumatic financial hardship, that we're going to be better for it. I'm really concerned about the planet he's living on with me. And I don't mean any malice towards the president, but he's got to clear his head. And more importantly, I think he's got to get better advisors around him. And I'm not volunteering for the job, but if he's in a pinch, call me up. I'll get you through it just through common sense, logic, reason, and the truth. All of which we've abandoned, by the way, along with decency and respect in our conversations. You know, I do want to say one thing. I mean, this is a little bit on a tangent, but the news is running with this optic of Nancy Pelosi elbowing away one of the children of a newly elected official, congresswoman, in Texas. And they're trying to explain that she was somehow trying to keep her in the shot. Normally, when you shove people away, it takes you out of the shot. If you really wanted to be in the shot, I would have put my arm around her and braced her. What an optic that would have created, huh, folks? Or the two children there around the both of them. But why would we do something that would galvanize the country? To create an optic where, you know, we're coming together on this. This isn't a bad thing. You know, we're so agenda-driven today that we're destroying the country. I don't know how many ways to say it to you and how many languages to say it in. And I'm also very limited in my language capability, just for the record. But we've better start looking at these issues dead in the eyes. We're at a point where you can't visit a major city without worrying about becoming a victim of a crime. Period. New York is what I call random, my home. Basically driven from my home. Not me personally, but for the safety and welfare of my wife and my children. Just not tenable anymore. Can't afford to risk having my wife walk to a corner to go to a food emporium and then them being assaulted by someone mentally ill or homeless, or better yet, someone robbed them. And the robberies are up in New York dramatically. The violent crime is up in New York over 30%, even with the new mayor. He's pigeonholed with this New York bail reform, which they somehow think was a good idea, of making it a revolving door for the criminal element. There has to be consequences. There has to be boundaries. I'm not subscribing to not giving consideration, but when people come in multiple offenders 3 and 4 or 5 times, which is what's happening, don't take my word for it, look into it yourself, that's not helping things. If this is a form of reparation, you need to have a real good sit down with yourself and understand this. This isn't helping anyone in the minority community. As I've spoken to before, I speak to you again. If you want to get into changing the disparity in which minority communities live, invest some money in bodies. You don't have to go in and stop and frisk. Just go in, impose a curfew, saturate it for a short window of time with the National Guard and uniformed police to send a resounding message. You will not carry guns in these communities anymore. You will not put innocent children, some of them your brothers and sisters, in danger any longer. And while you're at it, we're going to get everybody a better education. We're going to upgrade your housing. We're going to upgrade your medicine, all of which are lacking. You know how I know? I bumped up against it hard, guys. I can only tell you, I won't go into a whole journey about this, but trust me, I know firsthand. I spent the majority of my life, especially my youth, with minorities in it, predominantly black people. I was born in Brooklyn, in Bedford-Stuyvesant, only white family on the block. My parents didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, and I bettered for it, actually, because it made my mind open up and understand how people are living here. We have problems here. What really is annoying is that we can fix them. We just seem to lack the resolve, and I don't understand why. I am referred to as a fixer. I don't get involved in a melodrama. I just want to come in and fix it, guys. That's it. You don't have to give me anything. Don't pin a badge on me. In fact, leave me alone. Let me have a little peace and quiet and calm. Something that it's hard to wrap your arms around in this culture where you're so distracted and pulled and just tormented on a daily basis. I almost said weekly. It's daily, hourly basis. I just want to see things get fixed for my children. For me, I'm going to hop, skip, and jump through this thing. I don't have any real concerns. I've lived my life. I had an awesome life. I've had careers. And I'm still working, by the way, because I don't see the real benefit in retirement, sit home to die. I don't get that. I don't understand that at all. I do have to say one thing. Go look at this song, Toby Keith, Don't Let the Old Man In. We'll be right back, guys. We're back, ladies and gentlemen, and I have Ryan from Colorado. Have you seen pictures of G7 leaders? Do you really feel safe and confident in the economy with these so-called leaders heading our global financing? Well, I think this whole issue of a global economy is why the United States is in such trouble today, because we rely on everybody outside of our borders to supply us everything. You know, starting with chips for the purpose of this discussion. They're in your TVs, they're in your phones. Oh yeah, they're in your cars, which is why you can't get cars. At this point, I'm just saying, if I were the president of this country and maybe the leaders of these other foreign countries, I would kind of pull my horns in and try to look within my own country to see what would better this country. I understand the whole premise of a global economy, global financing. It may sound good in theory. Just to remember who ushered it in, it was Nixon and Kissinger. It focused primarily on China. Look what we did. We developed a country that basically is holding you hostage in many ways. I defy you to look at any number of electronic products that you might have and look at its origin. It's China. Many of the parts on your cars are from China. The chips are from Taiwan and China. I do understand we're starting to build some factories here to chips. But I think that's a good year or so out before we're going to be able to get a handle on that. I tell you something else. You buy a new car today, they come to you incomplete, without running boards, without front and rear bumper sensors, without heated steering wheels if you happen to be in the Northeast and you like a heated steering wheel. I guess it's something that you can enjoy in the wintertime. I don't understand what we're doing. I'm trying to understand the agenda of the country in regards to finance, because you've traumatized the financial community here. Goldman Sachs about a month ago had a sit down with the mayor in the city of New York telling him, we're heading out of town. Not safe to go to work here. We're going to relocate. A little bit of a tangent tied to the finance community in New York. That's going to traumatize New York if Goldman leaves. I can tell you that much. I like the fact that the government approved the pipeline from Russia to Germany as they were shutting ours down. I guess when we talk about this concern of the planet, it's only concern of the planet in the United States. Is that how that goes? I don't understand the agenda today. If I didn't know any better, I would swear they were trying to destroy the country. That's the only thing I can possibly say. These summits, I don't mean to question them, but I do, because every country is agenda driven. And I can tell you this right now, none of those countries are concerned about our needs or an agenda that we need to embrace. And it almost appears as if the president is incapable of identifying an agenda we need to embrace. And it goes beyond the economy, by the way. We do need to start to rebuild this economy in some capacity. I hate to break everybody's heart who's onto the whole electric thing, and I'm not opposed to it. We're just not positioned to transition. That's all there is to it. And to listen to Buttigieg, as I mentioned earlier, now suddenly talk about $5 billion for charging ports. On a good day, the quickest you can charge a car, and I got this from Tesla, that needs a half a charge is 20 minutes. If that car's way down, you better plan on sitting there for a while. And it's not free, by the way, either, ladies and gentlemen. I do want to remind everyone else of something that's really significant. These steam turbines are driven by fossil fuel. You do know that, right? And nuclear energy, both forms of energy that we just refuse to embrace on the left. And here's the interesting thing about the left, now that I'm going on another tangent for you, all of which intersect. It is a small percentage of the Democratic Party that is disrupting this party and their agenda that would help make this country healthy. I don't mean to pick at this young girl, Cortez, in New York, but she's not very well traveled, guys. The reason I can speak to you in such a broad array of topics is because of the stimulation I've received from listening to people and observing people. This young girl, who's a very well-educated person, was a bartender. I was a bartender, by the way. I learned a lot about people that are drinking, which is why I don't like alcohol. It's a coping mechanism. We like to embroil you in that. I'm not going to go off on a tangent about alcohol. We're going to stay with Cortez. Intelligent young girl, pretty well spoken, just completely misguided. She lives in a cocoon. She speaks to topics that are kind of, I would say, in her lane. And oftentimes she speaks incorrectly to them. I'd like to know how well traveled you are. And by that I don't mean how many boyfriends you've slept with, because I know you seem to be preoccupied with people that might be enamored with you. But how well traveled you are, how much of this country you've traveled, how many people you've visited in various cities across this country. Have you felt the heartbeat of this country? You haven't. You're a young girl. You got elected congresswoman at about 27 or 28 years old. Oh yeah, by the way, I think less than 20% of the registered voters voted in that election, which is consistent with New York City. Please don't sell yourself to me as someone who's experienced in life. It's why I have battle fatigue. I'm over-experienced in life. I see the stupidity, the short-sightedness, the problems we make when there are none. Don't make problems when there aren't problems. I do want to remind you of one thing, Ms. Cortez. I watched your live MSNBC interview on Morning Joe with Chuck Scarborough, and you had a young Democratic congressman on, and you guys were speaking to what a travesty it was that we didn't have the light rail. I got it. The people in minority communities are worried about the light rail. The people that are struggling throughout this country right now as a result of these energy policies and this inflation rate are worried about the light rail. I know you want to keep up with the Joneses in Japan, for example, that have them in other parts of the country, but trust me, that's not a priority. What I found so interesting about it was quite self-serving. It's how fast you could get from New York to D.C. or Boston to D.C. or Philly to D.C. on a light rail. And you somehow commingled it in a statement as to how everyone would benefit. Really? You got to be responsible. You have a lot of potential. Your thought process is a little bit awry because everybody keeps reinforcing your bad habits. This reminds me of Hollywood. You know, the people in the entertainment industry have business managers, personal managers, agents, hair and makeup people, the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, all of whom validate their ideas and their thoughts and their bad behavior oftentimes. They make excuses for them. Same thing is going on with you, just for the record. And I think some other people as well who are elected officials. I don't mean to single you out and pick on you because I don't feel that would bear any fruit. I'm just trying to give you some food for thought. Travel this country a little bit like I have, up and down, in and out, and across. It's really interesting how diverse the people are, how we are all products of our environment, how all of our agendas are different based on where you're geographically positioned in this country. Get out there and learn a little bit about your country. Then step out of the country, as I have, and visit foreign countries in South America and Europe. And just put your guard down and just try to absorb what they're exuding. You'll learn a whole lot about life and yourself, I might note. It's amazing what an authority you are on so many topics. And I don't really intend on going off on you, but you're becoming the voice of the Democratic Party. I know you'd like all the older Democrats to go away. Schumer, Pelosi, Feinstein, any number of them. But they're not going anywhere for a while, and you still have a younger demographic that are somewhat conservative. Guys, that's it for today. I appreciate you listening. I encourage you to call and become part of this conversation. I have a feeling there's a lot more Lindas and Chris's out there, and I need to hear from you. BetweenTheLines.tv. That's how you get a hold of us. Email me or call in, even better, so we can have an exchange. Thank you for joining me today.